This is Everyday Leaders. I'm your host, Melahni. Everyday Leaders is an inspirational show to help you develop strategies to overcome everyday obstacles in your life. Today's guest applies valuable leadership principles to live his life with success. Kelly Glover is my guest today. Everyday Leaders 50 and 50, Show 1 starts now. Welcome to the program, Kelly.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Thank you for letting me twist your arm and getting you on the show. So I want to open up the show by having Kelly talk about his story a little bit. I think from this podcast, the purpose is to inspire others through our lives. And Kelly has a very interesting story that, a little bit of background. We went to high school together, and
A couple years
ago. That's all we'll say. But there are things that you do through your life that you bond with people. And some of those are, we all go to grade school and middle school and high school. And it seems like no matter what happens in our life, we still have this bond because we were in classes together. We experienced, our teenage years together. We went to sports. We all cheered for the same team. And so you always kind of have that connection through your entire life. And the reason that Kelly is here today, because he has a story to share about his personal obstacles, strategies, and I feel like his story can help so many other people to just attain success daily through his story. So if you could, Kelly, just talk to us a little bit about, where you are in your life today, what you do in your career, and kind of what's going on.
Okay. I'm an engineer at a company in Shelbyville, Indiana. We make rubber boots for vehicles, and so I'm a quality engineer down there.
So all of you other engineers out there can kind of understand that when you have an engineering mind, you want to take things apart and fix them and make things fit together into this puzzle. I talked to Kelly a little bit about when you have this brain, you want things to kind of be in a symmetrical line. And the reason that Kelly's on this program today is because not only is he an engineer and a friend, but he has had some challenges in his life. And in the last few years, he has experienced some things that I feel like some other people in the world can connect to, because it's not only about his experience, but it's about how he has faced those challenges. So, can you tell us a little bit about, what's happened to you in the past few years?
Sure. You want me to go back to kind of when all this started?
Yeah, take us back to the beginning.
Yeah, so it was actually 2008. I had gotten to a point where I just didn't feel that great. Had some weight gain, where I was riding my bike after work, doing a lot of physical activity, lifting weights, that's something that I loved ever since high school. I got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. I was fatigued after work. Just something was wrong. I think it's funny how your body has a way of telling you, something's wrong. Mm-hmm. And so I had gone to the doctor, and strangely enough, I had a fill-in doctor. My other doctor was on vacation, and this guy looked through my file, maybe where another doctor wouldn't have. My regular doctor wouldn't have, and saw some things that were odd. So he had ordered some tests and an echocardiogram. So I had taken off work, got an echocardiogram on September 12th, 2008. These dates kind of stick out in your head when you have something like this. So ended up meeting a couple good friends, Mark Hubley and Aaron Baziri, at a wing place and getting some dinner, and got a call from my doctor. Said, hey, I usually don't do this, but you need to go to the hospital right now. I've already called them. They're waiting on you. So that's all I got. I have no idea what's going on. So I went to St. Francis ER, and they looked at the echo and found a 10 centimeter by 17 centimeter mass in my chest. This was pushing up against my pulmonary artery, which would account for a lot of the fatigue and the general bad feeling that I had. So that kind of started a chain of events that to me, was spinning out of control. Not a lot you can do about it. So saw a few doctors. One doctor at St. Francis said, there's nothing we can really do about this except cut you open and remove this mass. He directed me to a doctor, Mary Lou Meyer, who was an oncologist and knew right away that this was some form of cancer, that I needed to get a biopsy. So ended up getting a biopsy and found out that it was a malignant tumor in my chest. And so that led me down to IU Health, which I think it's IU Health now. They've changed names a few times, but so that's where I ended up dealing with my problems. So I don't know exactly how far into detail you want me to go with this medical issue.
Yeah, but so I guess from just a listener's perspective, how did that change your life immediately? Like, how did that impact you, your thoughts about the world? When somebody says you have cancer or you have a problem, and then we're going to go here and have another test. But when you heard that word malignant,
it definitely gets your attention. And I guess the reason I kind of went backwards when I started telling you this story, and I think a lot of people in the cancer community can probably tell you the same thing, is, there's something that leads up to this diagnosis of cancer. So I had a couple weeks there where we know something's wrong. We don't know exactly what it is. We know there's got to be a biopsy. So there's this big waiting game. So I had these 2 weeks to sit and think about what, is this going to be cancerous? What if I do? If it is, you're just kind of at a loss. So by the time I got the phone call that actually said, hey, this is cancer, I think I had time to prepare in my mind a defense mechanism. Mm-hmm. So, immediately I hear this, and the minute I hung up the phone, it was, okay, what do I do now? I need a plan of attack. How am I going to take care of this? I knew I had to call doctors at IU. I knew that was the place I needed to be just by talking to other oncologists and other surgeons. But the other thing I thought besides that was probably half an hour after getting that call, I went to Cracker Barrel. Mm-hmm. I called my mom and my stepdad and started building a support team. Mm-hmm. That's automatically going to start with your immediate family. Mm-hmm. That's first thing you turn to is probably since, I was a kid. Mom will fix it. Mm-hmm. What do I do here?
If Mom can't fix it, Cracker Barrel can, right?
Yeah, they might cause a host of other problems, but I sure felt better.
So we talk about a lot of things that you've experienced kind of reflect, and I want to kind of take us down kind of the leadership role of how this mirrors some things in leadership qualities. You talk a lot about your mom, right? And modeling is one of the laws that we always teach on. And so how did your mom and what she taught you growing up, what are the values that she instilled in you to help you through this challenge of your diagnosis?
Well, I was, Mom raised me pretty much by herself. So, I think just work ethic and, not letting things get you down. There's always something you can do. And, like I was saying before with the support, there's somebody you can call. A lot of times, through sports, you learn, you got to take action yourself. You got to find a way to deal with this, a way to cope. So I think just by watching my mom go through the struggles that she did, growing up in a single parent house like that, you just you don't give up. You you find a way, and I think that's when people ask me about this cancer diagnosis. I think there's a lot of people that don't realize, they're like, how did you deal with this? Well, you just deal with it, because when your back's up against the wall, you find out there's things you can deal with maybe that you didn't know you could before.
So from watching your mom and knowing that, if you have a struggle in your life, you can surely overcome that. So strategies, when I think about, walking into a hospital and you say, when you walked in, you were not a cancer patient. When you walked out, you are, right?
Yeah,
Your life kind
yeah.
of changes. And so that kind of puts you into perspective of how do you, what are the strategies now you do to design your life around being this cancer patient? Like, what were the things that you had to change in your life? If anything, did you have to change things in your life now to kind of accommodate, testing and schedules and,
Yeah, and I did. There's a lot of things you have to change mentally. Um, there's a lot of I keep going back to this support thing. There's you learn that you can't do all of this on your own. You need help. I had a great boss. Somebody that would let me off work. I had several surgeries that required 6-8 weeks at a time off. So you learn to adjust how to deal with schedules, time management. You learn I just not to give up. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have to find a way to deal with this stuff, because life doesn't stop. You've got to find a way to make things work.
Mm-hmm. So there's another law, and I'm going to keep reflecting back on these because I teach this so much.
Okay.
But I think, part of this is helping people understand that when you're faced with something like this, I want to help inspire them to say there are new things that you're going to have to do. But we talk a lot to our classmates, and when I coach people about reflecting, thinking about the things that you've gone through and how important that has been to you, how that changes your life. So I'd just like for you to share a little bit about, now that you've gone through this experience, what you're looking forward to for the next phase of your life. Because now you've really had time to think about it. Like, okay, I am this patient, right? You look in the mirror and say, I am Kelly Glover.
Yes.
And I am a cancer survivor, right? I'm surviving this. And so what does that look like? What's the next phase look like to Kelly?
Well, I'm not sure. It's definitely, it's an adventure each step, but, I've reconnected with another classmate, Sonia Gunning, Nichols now. But the next phase is, to continue on what I started, my engineering career. I think the one thing that I guess that this whole cancer experience has sunk in with me is, when you're faced with that fear, that diagnosis, or multiple diagnoses, I've had a couple recurrences. Some of the stuff that seemed really important before kind of starts to fall away. And you start to realize that it's the people and the experiences in your life that really matter. So I would say it's changed me to the point that I'm a little more laid back. I think I'm a little more in tune with the people in my life, mm-hmm. whether it's my immediate family, maybe friends I haven't talked to in a while. Definitely, this relationship that I have with Sonia now. Mm-hmm. Things, the people in the experiences become much more important. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've taken away from this.
That's awesome, because it's about being aware. We talk about awareness all the time. Like, if you're not aware of your surroundings, you can't really change it, right? And so the
Right.
things that I think this whole reflection of when you find out that there's something that you need or want to change, and something maybe motivates you to change, right? You've gone through an experience. Sometimes it's fear, right? As you're going through this change, you're afraid of what it might look like on the other side. You know, I may
Sure.
have to change my environment. May have to change friends or family. But how did you deal specifically with fear? You know, when you woke up in the morning and thought, you know, can I get through this? And you talked about your mom a little bit, but what else is there inside Kelly Glover that says, you know, goodbye fear, shut the fear up. I'm not going to let this get me.
Gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I can. You know, the truth about that is, and I was talking to Sonia about this when you'd first asked me to do this podcast, and I thought, you know, you think to what inspires you, what drives you, what makes you get through all this, and the fact is, sometimes you don't. There are times that I'm beat, you know, that you, you know, you're down. You know. All I can do is lay on the couch. And then hours later, maybe a day later, you get up and you say, you know, you got a choice here. You know, you can either lay here and let this get you, or you can get up and live. You can live your life. So, you know, I think one of the things, you know, when the cancer diagnosis first came through, I wasn't finished with school yet, and I thought, you know, now this has gotten to the point where it's hard for me to breathe when I'm walking. It's, you know, some days it was hard just to get through work after that first surgery, and you just make a choice. And I thought, you know, I got to finish this degree. So, you know, you enroll in that first class back, and you just move. You just have to. You have to make a move, and you have to just make a choice, not to let it beat you.
So if we talk about, there's something that really inspires a lot of us that teach some of these laws, which are a law of the rubber band. And when we talk about a rubber band and it stays in one position, so it's just laying on a table, when you put it on something, it has to stretch. And so you put it around your hand or your wrist, and it has to stretch to get to that consistency. And then when you take it off of your wrist, it can never go back to its original state. It can never go back to that small little rubber band that was in the bag. If you think about that analogy, what's changed you? How are you different now that you've kind of gone through this experience the last 10 years?
Oh boy. Well, I would have to say that this is a lot harder than I thought. The thing that's changed me, I would say that it's probably softened me up as far as, I don't know, maybe made me a little more laid back. You know, I talked before about how people and the experience is a little more important in your life. I think there's a lot of things that, you know, when we're a little bit younger, we're a little edgier. You know, you get caught up in some of the, you know, the little annoyances in life and things like that. And now I don't think I let things bother me as much. You know, you learn to blow things off and maybe appreciate people for what they are, and you know, realize everybody's not perfect and everybody's going through something. I think, and that's you know, that's the one thing. Just going through what I have, you know, you just kind of soften up a little bit. Appreciate more people. Appreciate people more.
I appreciate that because you feel that, but until you experience something, I think it's so hard for people that have this shell, and they think, oh, I'm not going to let people in because I'll get hurt or I don't want to experience that pain. But, I teach and we talk a lot about pain creates growth. If you go through something, you're going to have to figure out how to manage it and how to get through it, right? And you've
Sure.
talked a lot about, when you were young, you watched your mom and she really set you up for success today to be able to get through this,
Sure.
like you have. And so it's so important for people to understand that, and you've touched on this too, that, you're not alone. You need to get support if you're going through something that's tough and challenging and fearful, to be able to reach out to others and get that support group, because
Yeah.
that's what's, essentially that's what's going to help you kind of get to that other side.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so if you think about, like, if you go to Colorado now and you have this different life, you're going to change your environment and don't ski and break your neck or anything like that. Do you have any plans to do anything different to, we talk about kind of contributing back to the world, or talking about, your experience to others, maybe in Colorado in a support group, or, writing a book ever?
I don't know. I've had a couple people ask me about possibly doing that. And, a lot of that started with these clinical trial updates on Facebook. Most of it has been, hey, I had labs done today, and, throwing some of the bold truths out there that happens when you go through a clinical trial. A lot of it's not very pretty. And I tried to be as transparent and honest as I could. And, the funny thing is, before I did this clinical trial, I was pretty closed off about my treatment. There was always I don't want to really put that on Facebook, because what if I do have to look for another job? Do they look at this? Am I going to be discriminated against because I've had cancer? Mm-hmm. Things that I just never would have thought about before. It kind of came out when I decided to do this clinical trial update. So there were a few people that came to me and said, "Hey, I think in the first post I had mentioned, I'm not going to bore people with all the details." And people were saying, "No, we need the details, because this is, if there's somebody else going through this is what they want to hear." And as I started the trial, I realized, this is the boring details and the not so pretty things are what people need to hear. Mm-hmm. So now that I've done this, I don't know if a book or anything is in the future, but I definitely I like giving back to the cancer community, or somebody, even if it's one or two people that read these posts and have been diagnosed with cancer of any kind and are going through a clinical trial, or just any kind of treatment, that can look at those posts and say, I understand what he's going through, and they don't feel alone. That's the biggest thing is you're not alone in this. So, there are people that you can reach out to, and I hope that that's what these clinical trial updates do. I had no idea that it would reach as many people. I guess you don't think, you get these friends on Facebook, that every one of them has friends, and this thing just balloons when you post something like that. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely like to give back in that form. I had mentored a robotics team at one point a couple of years ago, and I might try to do something like that again in the future. But
very cool.
It's definitely nice to give back and know that somebody's getting something from it.
Yep, that's what it's about. It's it's how you've lived your life with kind of this intention now, right? You always did, but now you go through an event that changes you. And so now you kind of realize, right? You've told the story that doing the things that you just did naturally, you weren't really thinking about it. You
Sure.
you went through it. You were trained from being young with these strategies, right? That you didn't realize what they were, but hey, mom, be strong, get through it. You can get through anything. You can tackle it, right?
Yep.
And you have that attitude. So it's the choice and the attitude to be able to say, hey, yeah, it might not be such a great day, but I know that tomorrow is coming and it's going to maybe be a little bit better.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
And then, hey, if I can get through the next day, it's even going to be better than that. And I think what's neat about your story, Kelly, is that you started to realize when you did start sharing with others, the impact that had. And I know the community, I'm on your Facebook community.
Yeah.
And, it's a lot of people that recognize like, hey, you're going through this pain. And some of us have had family or friends that have gone through cancer.
Sure.
But it's that connection. Again, it's that bond, it's that connection that we feel like we're on your team, we're your cheerleaders. We're wanting to make sure that everybody supports you and knows that, hey, if you need something, that we were all here to kind of help boost you on, right?
Yeah.
So it's great that you can feel confident and know that everything that you're doing, that you're sharing, it is helping so many other people to realize like, hey, don't be alone. Don't go through it by yourself because it's much better when it's shared.
Yeah.
Right? You get that support.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there is a law that I want to talk to you about, and it's the law of the environment.
Okay.
And so from this book, this 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth that I teach a lot, we talk about environment, and what it really means is growth thrives in conducive surroundings. And it talks about that we're only as good as the 5 people that we surround ourselves with. So it's basically like a meld, right? Those 5 people, we become those characteristics.
Sure. Okay.
Have those 5 people in your life changed throughout the last 10 years?
Yes and no. It's funny at the beginning of the show you mentioned, being classmates and we've pretty much grown up together. The thing that I found out, and I've got friends from college and I've made, friends and acquaintances throughout my life. And I don't know if the cancer diagnosis or some of the things that I've been through, I don't know if that has made me feel this a little more, because I have talked to other people that feel the same way. But, I look back now and it's like those classmates and those friends from high school and grade school, you learn to appreciate so much more. I think a lot of it is because, we grew up together. We went through some good times and some bad times together. So it's funny to me how they become so much more important, as we get older.
Mm-hmm.
So I, just in the last year, I've got certain people that have always been there in my life. And then, like reconnecting with Sonia, she's been back in my life for a year now.
Mm-hmm.
And where were we going with this? I just totally lost my train of thought.
It's because you're thinking about your girlfriend. The 5 people. So it really talks about the 5 people in your life that make you who you are, because it's kind of your character.
Yeah.
And so just about how that's changed in the last 10 years, thinking about like who you are now.
Yeah.
So you were diagnosed in 2008, and this isn't really like a cancer story, but it's just about how you evolve. So 2008 to 2018, who are those same 5 people, those key 5 people that have been in your life, that have influenced you, encouraged you, inspired you, kept you focused?
Well, there's a group of friends, and I don't know if I can this down to 5.
Yeah.
Because, there's this core group of guys that I went to school with. And of course, I'm going to bring fantasy football into this because we've been in a fantasy football league for about 16 years together now. Isn't that sad? So, so there's these group of guys that, not only do we have these good times, where we have these fantasy drafts and we go watch some games and have a couple beers, but, some of these guys were the same guys that were sitting with my mom when I went in for surgery at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, that are down at IU Health. There's, at least one of those guys that I worked with when I was at Ford for 12 years that has been there consistently. But then there's also, there are guys that I worked with at Wellman Furnaces, where I first got into my engineering career, that have been mentors to me. So, I don't know if I can limit it to just this one group of 5 people, but all of them have contributed in some way to make my life positive. To give me a career direction, friendship, brotherhood. Guys that Mark Hewley, Aaron Vaziri, Jeff Youngman, these guys that I have grown up with and are brothers to me, basically. And then there's my brother. All those people are so important, and they're all integral in being part of that support that has helped me get through some of the stuff that I've had to deal with in more ways than one. So,
what's the biggest, what would you say the most consistent thing that you've had to do in your life? Like from being young to now, when you think about the word consistency?
So I would say perseverance has been probably the most consistent thing. Just that ability to grind, to dig in and set a goal and get there, whether it was finishing school or getting through this disease. Just the ability to wake up and keep going.
Awesome. So what's your next step? What's your next IU Health? What is your next kind of challenge or?
Well, the clinical trial is about 6 months in now. It started before June. I remember this because June 27th is my birthday, and I actually took the first chemo drug on June 27th. But we had started a couple weeks before that with the testing. The good news is the drug is working. The side effects are manageable. They're there, but they're manageable, mostly through medication. I'm also trying some other things. I know in one of my clinical trial updates I had posted about the anxiety. Every 8 weeks you go in for these CT scans, and there's a good chance the drug doesn't work anymore, or I have to change, my path, and I don't know what that's going to be if I do have to do that. Surgeries are pretty limited. Well, surgeries are not an option anymore, so my path becomes very narrow. So right now, the clinical trial is the way to go, and Eli Lilly is footing the bill for this thing, so I can't say enough about the care that I get at IU Health, the doctors, the nurses, and Eli Lilly for footing the bill for this drug, so that it's been proven in breast cancer, but it has never been proven in what I have, and we're proving it. So
That's
right
awesome.
now we just continue the path we're on until I have to change that path, and maybe I don't have to change it. We'll see.
We'll see. Every day's a new day, right?
Every day's a brand new day.
Wow. So how can people follow you?
Oh,
How can people follow your story?
Right now, I would say through Facebook. If there's anybody that listens to this podcast that that thinks they can benefit from my story, or if they just want to follow the clinical trial updates, just friend me on Facebook and I'll add you. I don't have any kind of website or anything like that yet. I don't know. Maybe sometime in the future. Just depends. I don't know. Some of the response I've gotten, it's made me think about it, but I haven't taken that action yet. So
We'll see. But it's Kelly Glover, KELLYGLOVER on Facebook, and I will connect his name and his Facebook to this podcast post, so you'll be
Great.
able to follow him. But thank you for joining us tonight.
well, thanks for having me. I'm
The
honored and humbled.
the first 50 in 50, and it was a very great honor to have you here with us. So
Well, thanks. Appreciate it.
enjoy the journey, right?
Yeah, that's right. Get everything you can out of it.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining me this week on Everyday Leaders 50 in 50. You won't want to miss next week's show, which is show 2 of 50 in 50. My guest will teach you how to live your life every day with intention. When you subscribe to Everyday Leaders in Apple iTunes or for Android in the Google Play Store, you can receive automatic notifications each week for my new shows. Join me. Everyday Leaders Show 2 starts January 28th.